Dan needs a little introduction to many of us in this room. Yes, yes. I'd like to say I certainly appreciate his way with words. He's a longtime library supporter and teaches writing at a number of Bay Area venues, in addition to his night job at a group home in Santa Rosa. He lives in Guerneville with his wife Susan and children Circe and Daedalus. Dan's latest published collection is entitled Occupy and Other Love Stories, published just last year. Tonight we bring you the Junior Ambassador, featuring Diz Struffles as Whitley, Bruce Horace Robinson as Greg, Peter Andrews as Dad, and Laurie Lippin as Mom. And I'll be narrating. Kurt. Oh yeah, baby. Humble. My brother, 13, was eager to try out a used set of golf clubs given to him by our father. It was his proposal that I join him on a walk to the nearby senior high school where he would hit balls on the vacant football field and I would watch. I am 8. I said,
"Certainly, Greg, that sounds like fun for you. And given that you would be severely punished if you were to leave me home alone, I would be very glad to accompany."
Why do you talk like that? Oh, never mind. You can carry the bag and be like my caddy.
Oh, I'll be like a real caddy. Like those boys I've seen on television, only, of course, much younger.
Hurry.
I hurried. We walked down a hill, past a gas station, a small, quaint but sad correctional facility, friendly bail bondsman's office, and on to the senior high. We climbed the fence, thoughtfully reached for the bag so that I could climb the fence with ease. We took a position beneath one of the goalposts, and he said,
"Hurry, give me a wood."
"There are 2.
"Just give me one."
The field was surrounded by a track, and it happened that there was a man, probably in his mid-40s, running very slowly around it. It looked like running, the way his elbows moved up and down, the way his breasts rippled, but the pace, it seemed more like walking. The man was wearing a girdle. I wondered if he was embarrassed. I chose not to look at him long, though he was a curiosity to me. "Rather," I said,
Greg, let's be careful we don't hit the ball in the direction of that running man."
Is that running?
Oh, I see your point. But still...
Give me a tee and a ball and I'll show you how to play golf.
Excellent.
As I was zipping shut the compartment for tees and balls, I felt a sensation like none I'd ever felt. It took perhaps a minute before I could attribute a cause to the pain below my right eye. My vision seemed less precise. More, I seemed to be on my back, a feeling of grass tickling my neck. Greg was standing over me.
You have to stand back. When I swing the club, you have to stand back. Didn't I tell you that? I know Dad told you that.
I confess, for a moment, I was not only stunned by the sharp blow to the head, but I was puzzled by Greg's apparent anger. And then I seized upon exactly what was happening.
You seem angry, Greg, but I think you're frightened. We both know that Dad won't be happy about this.
Let us cut to the kitchen. 3 hours later, where my family likes to have its dinner. Greg had encouraged me to keep my mouth shut about what happened. If I were questioned about the golf ball-sized contusion beneath my right eye, I was to say...
I fell down.
We rehearsed my performance many, many times. To Greg's dissatisfaction, I felt I had to tell him...
I am uncomfortable with this honesty, and Dad won't likely buy it.
You could fall down. It wouldn't have to be a lie.
Nor would it be the truth. Look, Dad is not unreasonable. He may be upset or...
You're a freaking freak.
I would describe our father as a kind-hearted man, who in most circumstances displays good judgment. But on the occasions when he's felt his instructions have been ignored, he's capable of surprising vehemence. I've considered at such times that perhaps he was robbed of his own childhood, the opportunity to make poor choices and be forgiven, the relative security required to test the limits of his own parents' authority. But when this had been foremost in my consciousness, I had reasoned, wisely I think, not to broach such a discussion. He would hit me. Neither of us would feel good about it. Greg's assessment of the situation seemed accurate. We entered the steaming kitchen. Greg first, me flanking on the left, my wounded right eye in the shadow of his left shoulder. Mom was removing a plastic sealed bag of creamed chipped beef from a pot of boiling water. On the table was a bowl of steaming rice. What an excellent cook she is. And I was happy to tell her so.
Mom, every night it seems you outdo yourself.
It comes frozen in a pouch.
But the quantities, they're always perfect.
Both you boys, wash your hands.
Our father was seated at the head of the table, and he seemed not to have taken notice of us. He was picking at something stuck between the tines of his fork. He is not a fan of food from pouches. And recently, I think only the day before, he said as much to my mother. I admired his directness, but I think he failed to appreciate my mother's point, which was also direct.
You're not the only one with a job. You want real food? You cook it.
It's difficult, frankly, to say what he made of her points, because the rest of dinner, in spite of my best efforts, they ate in silence. Greg reached back and took hold of my sleeve and turned in perfect tandem to face the sink. Under other circumstances, this might have been a fun game. We're pretending to be fighter jets or water ballerinas. My senses are acute, and the fragrance emanating from Greg could only be described as a byproduct of intense fear.
This is not a game.
We washed, we wiped our hands, and we shuffled to our seats. Dad's examination of the silverware led to an examination of the flatware. He was certainly preoccupied, and I think unpleasantly so. It was Mom who brought the subject, as it were, to the table.
What the hell happened to your face, Whitley?
Here I must pause to explain that Whitley was a name chosen for me in honor of my mother's deceased father. The former Whitley was an editor for the Linoleum and Congolium catalog. In the evenings, he taught ballroom dancing in his studio. He was said to have had perfect form when it came to dipping. About the name, I feel somewhat neutral, but my father has registered his opinion in a few words.
Girlish. That kid's already going to have a rough go at school. Why put him through that?
Dad took my chin in his hand and turned my head to face his. I looked as brightly as I could into his eyes, and what I saw, a function of my unique gift, is that he was making a correct set of inferences. Turned to look at Greg, still gripping my chin. I could only see Greg through the corner of my swollen eye. He looked small and cloudy.
I want an explanation.
Listen, it was very painful, and I don't feel ready to talk about it.
He fell down.
In fact, I did.
How did he fall down?
Very fast, very hard.
I want to hear from your brother.
How did it happen?
In the silence that followed, I realized that our strategies had failed. The best bet would have been for Greg to come clean, but he was not speaking. Not sure he was capable of speech. I took it upon myself to break the impasse. After all, I figured, what good are my gifts if I don't put them to use when most needed? I fancied myself a connoisseur of good taste and a curator of goodwill. Peacekeeper.
Dad and Mom, I believe that Greg would like nothing more than to share the details of my injury. I guarantee he feels bad about it. But Greg, I'd say understandably, is frightened of reprisal. Perhaps we can come to some agreement before we move forward. A few careful words about how we might proceed.
My suggestion was met with such silence that I could hear the blood beating in my father's neck. Any moment, it seemed, Dad would reach over the bowl of chipped beef and grab Greg's collar. It was a spectacle we'd witnessed before. Though I'd never queried Mom outright, I know it makes her deeply uncomfortable. She swallowed as if she'd seen a mouse on her spoon. I also didn't like the spectacle. Greg's my big brother. Frightens me to see him helpless and trembling. I get a dark picture of human beings and the future. But to my great surprise, Dad sat back and sighed. It's as if he had a moment of critical self-reflection. Couldn't help but feel proud of him. An ambiguous smile came over his face, slow and uneven relaxation of many small muscles.
Golf! I bet you wanted to cream that ball.
Oh, that's the spirit, Dad. I see we're finding some common footing now.
And you probably saw an opportunity to silence Whitney in the process.
What? Am I hearing you correctly?
My mother's face looked as if it might either burst or cave in. Enormous pressure behind the seal, which was her lips. She was doing her best to refrain from laughing.
I must speak. I don't like where this is going.
That'll do, Whitley.
I think you said plenty.
This is outrageous. I feel outraged.
All faces turned toward me. If there was any expression, I'd have to say it was a look of doubtfulness.
Jeez, you don't know what it's like spending a day with him.
I can hardly imagine. What'd you use?
It was the driver.
Backswing, wasn't it?
And did you meet the ball squarely?
You know, this chipped beef isn't really that bad after all.
I wonder why they chip it.
That's something I never thought about. Maybe Whitley has an
I
opinion.
bet he does.
And I can't tell you what followed in terms of conversation. There was laughter and the enthusiastic scraping of forks on plates. There was, from my brother, my mother, and my father, peace and conviviality. I felt like a person among aliens, or an alien among people.